Window. I waited. I sat on the steps in front of my house, looking ahead, staring at the field stretching out before me. My sense of hearing felt as if it were switched off. I was focused solely on what my eyes could see. I remained motionless for several hours. Eventually, night fell. Then I stood up and walked forward. I stopped in the middle of the field. I tilted my head back so I could look into the space above me. I raised my arms to shoulder height and began to slowly turn in place, constantly watching and concentrating only on what I saw. It lasted a few minutes. Then I went back home and sat down at the table. On a clean sheet of paper, I drew a sketch of the field and the place from which I had just returned. Around my own figure I drew 6 lines, forming a shape similar to the structure found in a beehive. Then I closed my eyes, trying to recreate from memory the image of the sky, those few minutes I had spent in another world. It was a wonderful feeling. Once again I was disconnected from my surroundings. Calm filled my entire being. In the end, I smiled to myself, happy about what I had experienced. The next day, I built in the field what I had drawn on the paper the evening before. I set up 6 wooden panels in the previously described shape, leaving space between them so that one could enter the interior. The structure was about 5 meters tall. When I finished, I sat once more in front of the house, waiting for the day to fade away. Today's waiting was different. I could feel my heart beat, hear the faint rustle of the wind. I was not as focused as the day before. It was excitement, anticipation of what was about to happen. I was going to repeat my passage into the world above me. When I entered the prepared place in the middle of the field, calm returned. I lowered my head, closed my eyes, and began to breathe steadily, completely calming myself. I cut myself off from thought. Unconsciously, I lifted my head, still without opening my eyes. I breathed deeply and peacefully. After some time, I looked into the depth of blackness. Then the first question came, what am I so small in this vast emptiness? What exactly is the purpose of my existence in general, and here, in this particular place? For a long time I had felt different. At times I thought about myself and others as if I were standing aside, observing. I wondered whether others were also capable of looking at themselves and their surroundings from the outside. Am I different? It was not about physical traits, but about the ability to converse with oneself, to create questions and answer them, to search for and eliminate inconsistencies in pursuit of the ideal answer. That night, everything I had felt and pondered since childhood returned to me. I also formed a vision of how I would use this place in the coming days, or rather nights. On one of the walls I carved a word, window. From that day on, it was to become a permanent element of the landscape. Another day, I sit and think. I established the next steps of my contemplation. I knew I would need more time for new discoveries, so I prepared another element of my window into the inner world. At the center of the structure, I placed a 7th board, on which I intended to lie that night. I divided the paths of self-development into 3 areas: mind, body, and external stimuli. Each was to receive as much time as needed to reach satisfaction with my reflections. The point at which I would encounter the limits of logic was meant to become the moment of transition to the next stage of the plan. And so it happened. The following night I lay down on the platform in the field. I closed my eyes. After a few short minutes, I was far from the reality around me. There was no light. There was nothing. I looked around. After some time, bright lines began to spin and intersect in motion, slowly forming familiar shapes that transformed into three-dimensional figures. It was like a theater playing out before me. A child looked into its mother's eyes and reached out a hand to her. She began to cry. The image rotated slowly, as if it wanted me to see the entire scene from every possible angle. When I woke from this vision, I realized it had not been accidental. Even though I did not know what it meant, I knew I could not forget it. The next day, I sat once again on the steps in front of the house. I stared deeply into the image I had seen the night before. Unfortunately, the lines revealed only the shape. The details were impossible to reconstruct. My thoughts revolved around memories so faint they could not be restored at that moment. I knew the time that had already passed was not enough. More was needed, more time, more patience, and also the awareness that it might never come. Positive thinking was the only thing that could push me toward the light. The following evening was to bring another experience, regardless of my plan. Visions, feelings, and experiences formed themselves during the window. The image began to spin again, exactly as before. This time, however, I saw the face of a child. My face? It was silent, expressionless, devoid of emotion. Eyes fixed on the mother, tears streamed down the face. Once again a hand reached out toward her. She, too, was crying, silent in pain. This image jolted me awake from the vision. It was like a nightmare. I had no idea whether it was a story or an abstraction. It was silent, expressionless, devoid of emotion. Eyes fixed on the mother, tears streamed down the face. Once again a hand reached out toward her. She, too, was crying, silent in pain. This image jolted me awake from the vision. It was like a nightmare. I had no idea whether it was a story or an abstraction. The only solution was to lie down and fall asleep. The earlier experience made that possible. Nerves, chaotic thoughts, the disorder in my mind that I could not stop, all of it exhausted me. Within 2 minutes I was asleep as deeply as possible. The thoughts I could not control decided to help me on their own. They shut me down and allowed me to rest. I woke up. I looked at my hands and pressed them against my face. Out loud I asked myself, who am I and why is this so difficult? Then tears began to flow. I could not stop them. I had no conscious control over it. I did not try to resist. It was a process of unconscious self-healing. Eventually, logic suggested it was time to end the emotions. If I could not remember the details of events, then merely thinking about them should not provoke such a reaction. Emotions can take over only when the gate to those times opens, even slightly. I spent the next few days resting. The window was like a vehicle transporting me to other places, not always clearly connected to time. Fascinating visions, combined with extraordinary calm, were only seemingly moments of peace. In reality, the search for answers was far from idyllic. It was a true storm in the brain. The perception of various phenomena, light, shapes, was both intensely powerful and utterly exhausting. Eventually, it was time for another journey. That day, I wondered what would come to me, which of the 3 chosen themes I would be able to explore. It felt like preparation, like drawing thoughts toward me that might extract the right solutions, the right answers. Today I decided not to wait for evening and went to the window in the middle of the day. I was curious whether the time of day would influence me and what I hoped to achieve. I lay down, closed my eyes, and allowed myself complete relaxation. I disconnected from place and time. There was only me. Then I saw the boy again. He was sitting, cross-legged, hands resting on his knees, looking straight into my eyes. His face was calm, neutral in expression. At one point he slowly tilted his head toward his left hand and stared at it motionlessly. I thought I would do the same. I shifted my attention to my own hand, letting my gaze travel along its length, unsure whether it served any purpose. I must clarify that I did not do this physically. It was as if I were inside the dream I was experiencing. That means I did not move while lying on the board. I looked at the boy again. He had shifted his gaze to his feet. I did the same. This time I felt a slight tingling in the places my gaze visited. It felt like a gentle touch, invisible, yet perceptible. When I looked at the boy again, he was sitting upright with his eyes closed. Naturally, I immediately did the same. I wondered what would come next. A thought appeared. I should keep doing exactly the same. We had moved one level higher. He and I were observing our bodies in places inaccessible to sight. I tried to feel my shoulders and neck. I succeeded. I felt them even though I could not see them. The sensation was identical to touch. When I looked forward again, the boy was gone. I knew what he had shown me had a purpose, so I decided to repeat the observation of myself, believing the solution would come on its own. I did not wait long for the first attempt. I chose to try again that very evening. This time I was lying in my bed. I came up with an interesting idea. Because I felt pain in my shoulder, I decided to focus precisely on that area. I closed my eyes and disconnected from my surroundings. Eventually, I managed to feel my shoulder as if I were observing it. I slowly moved my gaze along the painful area. This touch transformed into the sensation of a massage. I continued until the pain significantly subsided. I could not believe what had happened. Immediately I thought, this is what the boy wanted to show me. I had just learned that it is possible to influence one's own body in a way I had never known before. At once another thought came to me. What are the limits of what I have just discovered?